Howard Wolowitz spent his entire life trying to escape his mother. The loud one, the overbearing one. The suffocating, screaming, never quite seen mother he was still living with as a grown man in his 30s, while all his friends had apartments and lives of their own. He hated it. He complained about it constantly. He swore, to anyone who'd listen, that one day he was going to get out, get free, and finally have a life that wasn't ruled by that voice bellowing at him from the next room. And then he did fall in love. He got married. He moved out. He built a whole new life with a woman he adored. Escape complete. Except here's the thing nobody quite says out loud. Howard didn't escape his mother at all. He failed completely, in the quietest and most human way a person can fail. He didn't stay trapped. He walked free, and then he rebuilt her, lovingly, from scratch, and married the result. And I want you to keep something in your chest for this one, because it reaches straight out of the show and into real life. If you have ever sworn, with everything in you, that you would never end up like your parents, or never repeat the exact kind of relationship you grew up watching, and then looked up one day and realized you were standing right in the middle of it, then Howard's story is going to land somewhere tender. Because this is a story about the patterns we swear will escape, and how they turn out to be the very things that feel like home. So let me be precise. It's not that Howard was a mama's boy, though he absolutely was. It's not that his mother was some cartoon monster, because she wasn't only that. It's this: Howard did not escape the dynamic that shaped his entire childhood. He married it. He found a woman who takes care of him, scolds him, manages him, and in a detail the show could not possibly have made more obvious, sounds almost exactly like his mother when he's angry. And here's the part that makes it more than a joke, and more than fair. In her own way, Bernadette married her childhood too. This isn't a story about one broken person. It's a story about two people who each ran from where they came from straight into each other's arms, because each of them recognized home in the other. That's the engine of this whole video, the great escape that was actually a circle. Welcome back to 4A. Today, we're looking at the marriage the show sold you as the mama's boy finally growing up, and I'm going to show you it was something stranger, sadder, and far more relatable than that. Let's start with the mother, because you can't understand who Howard married until you understand who raised him. Howard's mother is one of the most famous characters in the show that you never actually see. For the entire series, she's a voice, a booming, shrill, overwhelming voice from off-screen, screaming Howard's name, demanding things, filling every room she isn't even in.
Howard, what happened to the Oreos I left on the counter?
And the relationship is genuinely suffocating. Howard is the only member of the whole group who, well into adulthood, still lives at home with his mother. She cooks for him. She does his laundry. She runs his life. He screams back at her. He mocks her. He's mortified by her in front of his friends, and yet he cannot leave. He is completely, helplessly dependent on the very person he says he wants to get away from. The show even at one point compares the two of them to the mother and son from Psycho. That's the register we're in. A grown man and the mother he can neither live with nor live without. And before Bernadette ever came along, that dependence ran his entire life, in ways the show mined for years of jokes. This is a man in his 30s whose mother still laid out his clothes, still cooked every meal, still hollered up the stairs about his laundry and his bath. He puttered around town on a little Vespa scooter while sleeping in his childhood bedroom. And with women, he was a disaster, a leering, desperate, wildly inappropriate womanizer, throwing out creepy lines and getting absolutely nowhere, because the only relationship with a woman he had ever actually known was the smothering one waiting for him at home. He was arrested, developmentally, right at the age his father left, frozen as his mother's little boy. Everything about adult Howard, the neediness, the theatrics, the flailing with women, the sheer inability to be alone, traces straight back to that house and that voice. He wasn't a grown man who happened to live with his mom. He was a boy who had never been allowed or taught to become a man, because becoming a man would have meant leaving her, and leaving her was the one thing neither of them could survive. And you have to understand where that bond came from, because it's the key to everything that follows, and it's genuinely sad. Howard's father walked out on the family when Howard was around 11 years old. He abandoned them, and Howard has said, in so many words, that ever since his dad left, he became the whole world to his mother. Think about what that does to a kid. A father vanishes, and overnight, a boy becomes the entire emotional center of a lonely, frightened woman's life. She clings. She smothers. She makes him her everything, because he's all she has left. And Howard, a child, learns something in that house that will shape every relationship he ever has. He learns that this is what love looks like. Love is being fussed over and controlled. Love is a woman taking care of your every need while yelling at you the whole time. Love is enmeshment. Dependence, and that voice, that is the only blueprint for love Howard was ever given. And nobody escapes their blueprint just by wanting to. And the wound underneath all of it is abandonment, which makes the desperate clinging make perfect, heartbreaking sense. Howard's father didn't just leave, he vanished, completely. and Howard spent the rest of his life refusing to even look at the hole he left behind. When a letter from his father finally surfaces, written for Howard's 18th birthday, Howard won't read it. He can't. He would rather never know what it says than crack open that door again. Years later, a half-brother named Josh shows up at the door. A whole other family his father went off and built after discarding this one. That is the ground Howard is standing on. A boy taught at 11 years old that the people who are supposed to love you can simply walk out one day and never come back. And what does a child do with a terror like that? He clings with everything he has to the one person who stayed. He makes himself indispensable to her, and her to him, because as long as they need each other, that completely, neither of them can ever be left again. Howard's suffocating bond with his mother wasn't only her doing it to him. It was the two of them, both abandoned by the same man, holding on to each other so tightly that neither could breathe, because letting go felt like dying all over again. So Howard grows up desperate to get out, and eventually, he meets Bernadette. Sweet, tiny, soft-spoken Bernadette, a microbiologist, set up with him through the group. And on the surface, she is the opposite of his mother. She's small, where his mother is large. She's gentle and squeaky-voiced, where his mother is booming. She's a brilliant, ambitious scientist with a career of her own. This looks for all the world like Howard finally choosing something different, finally growing up and out. And then, slowly, the show starts showing you the truth. And once you see it, you cannot look away. And nothing exposes the real nature of that mother bond like what happens the moment Howard tries to bring another woman into it. When Howard finally gets engaged to Bernadette and tells his mother is rushed to the hospital. And the reason, once Bernadette pieces it together, is almost unbelievably revealing. Bernadette blurts it out, mortified, that Howard's mother collapsed because Bernadette gets to have Howard now and she doesn't. The mother, faced with losing her son to a wife, physically breaks down. That is not a normal mother-in-law being difficult. That is a woman who built her son into a substitute for the husband who left her and cannot survive being replaced. Howard was quite literally the whole world to his mother, and Bernadette walking in meant that world was ending. So from the very beginning, Howard's marriage is quietly a competition between two women for the exact same role in his life. And the thing that should stop you cold, is how Howard resolves that competition. Not by pulling away from the role his mother played, but by handing it completely to his wife. Because Bernadette has another voice. When Bernadette gets angry, that sweet little squeak drops away, and out comes something loud, shrill, commanding, and terrifying. A voice that sounds unmistakably exactly like Howard's mother. And the show does not treat this as an accident. It makes it a plot point. There's a specific moment where Howard consciously realizes that when she's furious, his wife sounds just like his mom. And watch what Bernadette learns to do with that. She learns to deploy the mother voice deliberately, to win arguments, because the instant Howard hears it, he folds, automatically, helplessly, the exact way he's folded to that tone his entire life. It's a reflex. It's Pavlovian. She found the button his childhood installed in him, and she presses it whenever she needs to. And the most telling detail of all, the first time she really unleashes it, screaming at him, calling him a putz in his mother's exact cadence, Howard's reaction isn't horror. He finds it attractive. He finds the sound of his mother's fury coming out of his wife sexy. If you needed one glue moment to prove that Howard's idea of love was wired at the root to that specific voice, that's it. And watch how Bernadette handles his proudest moment, because it is pure mothering. Howard achieves the single most extraordinary thing anyone in that entire friend group ever does. He goes to space, an actual astronaut, orbiting the Earth. It should be the crowning glory of his whole life. And when he comes home, bursting to talk about it, what does Bernadette do? She tells him to stop. She is tired of hearing about it. She shuts it down exactly the way a busy mother waves off a kid who won't quit talking about his day at school. His enormous accomplishment gets managed, minimized, and filed away by a wife stepping cleanly into the role of the parent who has heard quite enough. And here's the bitter little irony that caps it. After the spaceflight, it was Bernadette who insisted Howard finally move out of his mother's house and grow up. She pushed him toward independence. And then, the very moment his mother died, the two of them turned around and moved right back into that same house. The independence lasted precisely as long as the mother did. The second the original was gone, they moved into her home, and Bernadette moved the rest of the way into her role. And it does not stop at the voice. Bernadette steps into the whole role. She takes care of Howard, manages him, scolds him, mothers him. She tells him what to do, and he does it. The show even runs a recurring gag where Howard accidentally reflexively calls Bernadette his mother, just slips and says it because on some deep level his brain has filed them in the same drawer. And then comes the detail that seals the entire thesis. The one so on the nose it's almost unbelievable. When Howard's mother finally dies, what do Howard and Bernadette do? They move into his mother's house. They take her home, the very house Howard spent his whole life trying to escape, and they make it their marital home, and they raise their own children in it. He didn't just marry a version of his mother. He moved his marriage directly into her house and lived inside the exact life he swore he'd flee. The escape led him in a perfect circle, right back to the front door he started at. And the show even handed Howard a preview of being replaced, which cuts deeper than it first looks. When Howard's mother needed care, it was Stuart, the lonely comic book store owner, who moved into the house to look after her. And Stuart and Howard's mother grew genuinely close, so close that Howard got jealous, threatened, like a son watching another kid get adopted by his own mom. If you saw my video on Stuart, you know just how desperately that man needed a family, and for a while, Howard's mother became exactly that. Lost souls, a lonely woman and a lonely man, finding each other, and then she dies. Off-screen, suddenly, and Howard is shattered. He doesn't know how to exist in the silence where that voice used to be. For all his years of complaining, that voice had been the single constant of his entire life. The sound of being loved, being needed, being someone's whole world. And into that unbearable silence steps Bernadette, who in the show's own words, becomes a new version of his mother. He lost the voice, and his wife, already halfway, there, quietly became it. The grief and the marriage close over the very same wound. Now, why does this happen? Why does a man who genuinely hated the suffocation of his childhood recreate it so precisely? And the answer isn't that Howard is weak or foolish. The answer is the most human thing in the world. Howard was never given any other model of love. His blueprint, drawn in that house after his father left, said that love is being mothered, being needed and controlled and fussed over and yelled at by a woman who has made you her whole world. So when Howard went looking for love as an adult, he didn't consciously go looking for his mother. He went looking for the feeling of home, and the feeling of home, for him, was her. We don't flee toward freedom, we flee toward the familiar. And the familiar, for a boy raised the way Howard was raised, had a very specific shape and a very specific voice. He couldn't have chosen differently because he'd never been shown that different existed. And there is a name for this pull toward partners who recreate the emotional world of our childhood. Psychologists talk about how we drift, almost magnetically, toward the familiar in love, even when the familiar was painful, because familiar is what the nervous system reads as home, as safe, as recognizable. A person raised in chaos often finds calm boring and chaos oddly comfortable. A person raised by a smothering parent often feels unloved by anyone who gives them room to breathe, and truly loved only by someone who crowds them. It is not a choice you make with your conscious mind. It runs far deeper than that. Your earliest experience of love sets the thermostat, and for the rest of your life, you drift toward relationships set to that same exact temperature, because anything else feels wrong, feels cold, feels like not love at all. Howard's thermostat was set, in that house, by that mother, to a very specific and very high burn, and Bernadette, when she got angry, ran at precisely that heat. Of course it felt like love to him. It had been calibrated in childhood to feel like nothing else ever could. But here's where I have to be fair and honest, because otherwise this is just cruel and it isn't the whole truth. Because Bernadette is not simply a mother replacement, and reducing her to that would be an insult to one of the strongest characters on the show. Bernadette is a formidable, accomplished microbiologist, the primary breadwinner of the marriage, a woman with fierce ambition and a spine of steel. She is nobody's stand-in. She is her own, fully realized person. And here's the beautiful, symmetrical truth the show mostly left on the table. Bernadette married her childhood too. Because think about where Bernadette came from. Bernadette grew up as the eldest daughter in a big family, and she spent her entire youth being forced to raise her many younger siblings. Changing diapers, cooking meals, playing mother, before she ever got to be a kid herself. And she hated it. She resented every second of it, so deeply that it's the entire reason she famously didn't want children of her own. She had already done the job. She'd been a parent before she was a teenager, and she swore she was done. And then who does she marry? A grown man who needs to be parented. A man who needs someone to take care of him, manage him, scold him, and run his life. Bernadette swore off raising children, and then married one. She slid right back into the exact role she'd escaped, because it was her familiar too. She knew how to be the competent one, the one in charge, the one taking care of a dependent, better than she knew how to be anything else. So these two didn't just fall in love, they recognized each other. Howard found someone to mother him. Bernadette found someone to mother. Each of them looked at the other and, without knowing it, saw home. And Bernadette's side of this is so much richer than the show ever bothered to explore. Because Bernadette wasn't simply good at bossing Howard around by accident. She was trained for it, in a childhood she resented every single day of. As the oldest, she was conscripted into raising her younger siblings, cooking, cleaning, disciplining, parenting, while she was still a child herself. And she came out of it with one iron conviction. She was never, ever doing that again. She didn't want kids. She had already raised a house full of them. And then she married Howard and found herself once more managing a dependent who needed feeding, scolding, and constant supervision. The role she swore she'd left behind forever, she walked straight back into, because it was the only role she had ever truly been comfortable in. And then, of course, the show gives them children, and Bernadette becomes a literal mother, on top of already being Howard's. So here is the full aching symmetry. Howard needed a mother and found one. Bernadette needed to matter by taking care of someone in the only way she had ever learned and found a man endlessly in need of it. People, each carrying an old wound, fitting their broken edges together so precisely that from the outside it looked exactly like love. And maybe, in the end, that is all love ever really is. Now, I want to steelman the obvious objection, because it's a good one, and it deserves a real answer. You could say, this is deeply unfair. Howard and Bernadette genuinely love each other. Howard grew up enormously over the series, from a creepy, sleazy little man into a devoted husband and a good father. Bernadette is a powerhouse, not some passive mommy figure. Why are you pathologizing a happy, functional marriage? And you're right, on every point. They do love each other, truly. Howard did grow, more than almost anyone on the show. Bernadette is a titan. This is not a bad marriage, and I'm not saying it is, but here's the thing. Recreating your childhood pattern is not the same as having a bad marriage. It can absolutely be a happy one. The point was never that Howard and Bernadette are doomed. The point is that the story the show sold you, the mama's boy who finally escaped and grew up, is a myth. Howard didn't grow by getting away from the dynamic. He grew inside a brand new version of it, with a woman who genuinely loved him. Real love, real growth, and a childhood pattern reproduced right down to the voice, all at the very same time. Those things aren't contradictions. Honestly, that describes an enormous number of real marriages. We don't marry strangers. We marry the familiar, and then, if we're lucky, we grow up inside it together. And I want you to notice that the show knew exactly what it was doing all along. This wasn't an accident the writers stumbled into. They cast a voice for Bernadette's fury that deliberately echoes his mother. They wrote the running gag of Howard calling his wife his mom. They moved the couple into the dead mother's house. They compared him to the son from Psycho. Every one of those was a choice. The writers built this parallel, brick by brick, on purpose, and then mostly played it for laughs, for the easy joke of the mama's boy and the shrill wife. And that's the small tragedy of how the show handled it, because underneath the punchline was one of the truest, most universal things the whole series ever accidentally said about human beings. That the love we run toward is so often just the love we were raised on, wearing a slightly different face. So let me land this. Howard Wolowitz spent his whole life trying to escape his mother, and he failed in the most human way there is. Not by staying trapped in her house, but by leaving it, falling in love, and lovingly rebuilding her in the woman he married, right down to the voice that makes him fold. And Bernadette, running just as hard from a childhood of raising kids she never chose, married a man who needed raising and slipped straight back into the role she'd sworn off forever. Neither of them escaped where they came from. They just found it again, in each other, and called it love. And here's the thing, maybe it was love. Maybe that's what a huge amount of love actually is. People each carrying the exact shape of the home they grew up in, finding someone whose shape fits against theirs, because it's the only shape either of them ever learned. And here's what I actually want you to take out of this one, because I think a lot of you needed to hear it. If any of this landed hard, it's probably because you know, deep down, that you've done a version of it. You swore you'd never date someone like your father. You promised yourself your relationship would look nothing like the one you grew up watching. And then, one day, you caught the pattern, the familiar shape sitting right there in your own life. So here's the thing nobody in that apartment ever said to Howard. Familiar is not the same as healthy, and home is not always the same as good. The patterns you were raised in will always feel like love, because to your nervous system, they are love. They're the first love you ever knew. But you're allowed to see the pattern. And seeing it is the whole game, because you can love the person you chose and still notice the shape you fell into. And once you can see the shape, you finally get to decide which parts of it you keep and which parts you leave behind in the old house. Howard never quite got to see his, but you can. So the next time Bernadette's voice drops into that furious, shrill register and Howard instantly folds, look again. That's not just a funny bit about a nagging wife. That's a grown man hearing the exact sound of the love he was raised on and melting, because after all these years, it still means home. And if you can't quite laugh at the mama's boy the same way anymore, well, good. That means you finally recognize the circle he walked, because maybe, just maybe, you've walked a little of it too. Before you go, stay right here in 4A, because next time we're looking at the slowest, sweetest love story on the whole show, and I'm going to ruin it for you, respectfully. Amy Farrah Fowler waited years and years for Sheldon to love her back. Everyone calls it the great slow burn, the patient romance that finally paid off. But what Amy was actually doing, in all that waiting, is a lot darker and a lot sadder than the show ever let on. Amy and Sheldon. Hit that bell so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you back in 4A.